I feel too many feelings.
I'm just a fucked up girl who's looking for my own peace of mind.
Hello my dudes, I'm Steph Koza, and today I'm talking about the Feels Fest, the emotional roller coaster, the film otherwise known as Chemical Hearts. Chemical Hearts is based on the best-selling novel Our Chemical Hearts by Crystal Sutherland. It's directed by Richard Tan and it stars Lily Reinhart and Austin Abrams. So on the surface, it appears to be a melodramatic love story, but it's really about the travails of being young, the grief of loss, and the confusing limbo that happens in between adolescence and adulthood. The story follows Henry, a hopeless romantic writer who is a bit socially awkward, aren't we all though, who meets high school transfer Grace and he falls head over heels for her, of course he does, of course. And he tries to uncover the mystery of who she really is. Okay, so I don't normally look at reviews until after I've written my own review because I never want someone else's review to influence my own opinion. But I just had to read these because what is this? 56% critic rating versus 84% audience score? Girl, I had to know why. You know I had to know why. And I really don't truly know why, but I think I've put some pieces together and I figured it out. Here are my thoughts on this. The general population of film critics have either forgotten what it was like to be young, or they have never suffered the melancholy of adolescence to begin with. And furthermore, the most important point that I'm trying to make here, this movie was not made for them. It was made for teenagers, people. This movie was not made for pretentious film critics. Yes, it was made for teenagers. And also people like me who just really love the YA genre. Don't judge me. We all have our vices. And I mean, that could possibly just be due to the fact that I've never wanted to grow up or move forward in any way and constantly live in a false state of naivete where if I don't confront adulthood, it will never come. Am I right, ladies? But that's a whole other thing. I realize I'm not a teenager and this film was not made for me. But I still feel a strong connection to the teenage girl who felt too much, who sometimes wasn't very attached to the idea of being alive, who experienced hardships of first love, and this movie was made for that girl. And I loved it so goddamn much. In these negative reviews that I was obsessively reading, the common denominator was that this film was over-the-top, melodramatic melancholy. Have you been a teenager? Being in high school takes all of the worst possible things you could ever feel in an entire life, and it crams them into 4 years of congested, organized hell. Just letting out all my suppressed teenage angst for the world to see. This is going great. One of the quotes in this movie that I really loved is, "Being young is so painful, it's almost too much to feel." I think that quote really captures the tone of this film and what it feels like to be a teenager. Listen, maybe this film isn't meant for everyone. It's definitely not meant for everyone. I know we're all different and we all respond differently to our emotions, to our chemical reactions if we want to be thematic. But the fact is, this movie was made for the souls who feel too much. Young or old, just the ones who feel too much. I often feel like I feel too much. I'm a Pisces, I'm emotional, I'm kind of all over the place. I'm always deep in my thoughts and deep in my feels, and that's just kind of who I am as a person. It's just in my chemistry. So if you feel too much all the time, forever, then you'll probably like this movie. About halfway through viewing this film, I had this thought, just this little realization that no movie has really hit me quite as hard in my teenage emotional roots since The Perks of Being a Wallflower. I've always kind of felt like that film really captured what it was like for me to be a teenager, to be awkward and to be an outcast and to just feel like nobody ever notices you and to feel like a wallflower. And so that movie just really struck something in my core. This movie did that for me too. I wouldn't say to the extent that Perks of a Wallflower did. That movie is God tier, but it struck something in me. Another quote that I really enjoyed, and yes, I did literally write down all of the quotes in this movie that I liked because they're good. But one of the quotes is, "Adults are just scarred kids lucky enough to make it out of limbo alive." And that's just, Chef's kiss. Our adolescent years play such a huge role in who we are as adults, and the film plays around with this concept of limbo, of the confusing and defining years between childhood and adulthood. It's like the worst time to exist. Like, nobody has a good time when they're in this weird teenage limbo. It's awful. It's the worst. I would never want to relive that ever. This film is an honest and raw look at heartbreak, grief, love. One of its strengths is its earnest portrayal of young love in particular, how it's messy and confusing, and maybe it feels over the top to some people, but I think that's kind of what first love is supposed to be. It's way more intense than it needs to be, but it's new and it's weird and everything hurts and you're hormonal as hell and you feel things that you've never felt before, so it's overwhelming. It is over the top.
Oh, to be young and to feel love's keen sting.
And so the heartbreak that follows is even more painful. Like, nothing has ever hurt you as bad as this one thing because the world is still so new and everything feels like the end of the world. But sure, call it melodramatic. I don't care. Listen, it's not perfect. It does suffer from that usual YA book to movie translation barrier where there are lots of like beautifully crafted lines, but they're in voiceover, and so they don't quite hit the same that they do on the page. And there are lots of typical YA tropes in this movie. But I like the YA tropes. I like this genre. It's my comfort food. I like the soft indie soundtrack, the dreamy visuals, the overdramatic poetry references that nobody asked for. Love it. I also really admire Lili Reinhart, who has a huge teenage fan base because of her role on Riverdale, and she's honestly taken up that responsibility and that mantle tremendously. She's an advocate for teen mental health, for suicide prevention, body positivity, and honestly, she's just an incredible human being, and I have a really big crush on her. If anything at all, this film demonstrates her strong range as an actor. Her performance is contagious, heartbreaking, and raw as hell.
I've got nothing left. I've got nothing left.
And I think the fact that she's able to give this film to her young audience, an audience who has probably never seen a film like this before, is incredibly important. And that's something else that popped up a lot in these other reviews. A lot of critics are saying, sure, it's a fine story, but it's not a very original story. We've seen hundreds of films like this before. It's not bringing anything new to the genre. And yeah, okay, I will admit that that's kind of true. But you also have to realize film critics watch way more movies than the average person. So yeah, to a film critic, this movie might seem a little bit redundant, but to the teenage audience, to the audience that this film was made for, they probably haven't seen all those other movies. This could be their first exposure to something like this. And I think that's what people are missing. They're like,
oh, I've seen this a million times, I'm so sick of this, blah, blah, blah.
Yeah, for you, sure, I can see why you wouldn't like that or relate to this at all. But it's not made for you! It's not made for you! Gah! And yes, I am also technically a film critic, but I hold on to my teenage roots, my youth. I just wish people would just shut up. Nobody cares about your opinion right now. This isn't about you. Anyways, there's my review with a nice cup of tea. Let me get back on track. To the point, I'm going to give Chemical Hearts a 4 out of 5. So, did you see Chemical Hearts? Let me know in the comments below what you thought about it. I'd love to chat with you about this film. I personally really enjoyed it. I thought it was a really good time. I cried like a child. This movie gave me like disgusting snot tears, like not cute. Not cute. Crying is cool. But that's all for my video. Thank you guys so much for watching, and I will see you guys next time. Bye.